that. This is the audio podcast, episode 114, in the midst of chaos. It's May the 13th. Samuel Freeman is not with us, but never fear, because...
Adam is here! Yes! So we got a lovely audio podcast duet to come. And yes, we're going to cover our news. We got some plunder. It's all going to be very good. You can you can consume your audio podcast in standard kind of ways. Best way is usually via podcast, iTunes, Gpod, or what's the name of this other one?
Stitcher.
I was right. That's what I said last week. And also we do a live video cast via YouTube. It's kind of, maybe, I don't know if anyone actually catches us for these because we tend to do them erratically. But yes, you can see all of the past episodes at youtube.com/the audio podcast. And of course you can get in contact, Twitter at the audio podcast, show at theaudiopodcast.co.uk, and you can follow our notes at theaudiopodcast.co.uk/show/114 for this week. Let's do it.
I'm Scott Hewitt, and I say it's time to hit the news. So our first one here, this is a real-world event for people probably most likely in London. The team behind SessionBand are hosting an event at the Apple Regent store on the 15th of May this year, 2014, not 2017, which apparently is what they've been put in the show notes, at 7 o'clock. Anybody.
I only just noticed that. Brilliant. That's like 3 years in advance.
It is free to anybody, but it does require, you do have to register beforehand that you want to attend, which you can do via the Apple Store via the Regent Street Apple Store website. There you go.
There you go. And the session is going to feature top saxophonist Graham Blevins. I mean, I have to admit, I've never heard of him, but I guess his credits here in the notes, it says that he's played for or on the records of Kylie Minogue and Phil Collins. Am I correct?
That is, according to the notes, yes.
Aha. Okay, so what is SessionBand, Scott?
Well, it's the fastest way to create pro-quality music, Adam.
Oh, and is there a particular platform that you have to use to get access to this amazing system?
It's iOS.
Okay, iOS.
My understanding is that it is from what I've seen and what I've played, my understanding is it's a kind of collection of pre-deployable kind of loops that you can then edit as audio.
Okay, so maybe not the type of thing that you or I would use, but a good way for maybe live musicians or those with less experience to get a foothold in music creation. Cool.
Exactly so. I suspect it gives an incredibly polished sound and product. I suspect it suffers in the same way that most of these kind of tools do, in that the range of thing you can create is, quite limited, and people will probably be able to identify what you've used to do it very quickly in the future, because generally in these things there tends to be like a few really good things, or and everybody overuses them really quickly, sort of stuff.
A bit like GarageBand, Apple Loops in GarageBand, or something like that.
Yeah, I suspect that's likely to be the kind of thing that happens, sort of stuff.
But as would normally happen, there'll always be those who will go the extra mile and maybe use the tool, but create their own sound set or something like that.
Yeah.
That has a link. Going in and getting your hands dirty. It has a link to our next story, which is about Hyperbent, which I believe is actually a set of. Is it a set of programs?
It's a set of samples, which are available for Live, Connect, or Logic. Available right now on a promotion, and it's 80 circuit bent or hardware hacked instruments. So they've had a range of samples for what they've had a kind of lots and lots of small kind of groupings they've been building up, and this is the complete kind of grouping instead of the whole lot. And I didn't put the pricing in, but if I remember correctly, I think the promotion pricing is really good actually. I think
It is. I've got it up
it's a
here.
massive saving.
It's usually $59, and it's down to $9.99. So that is a good deal. And so I suppose the samples are of instruments that have been circuit bent by these people, and they've sampled them and now made those available. It's not like it would be nice to. I saw the article and I was like, is it going to be that you can actually buy circuit bent instruments and there's a discount, but it's not quite as nice as I thought it was going to be.
Cool. There you go. Some other new toys that are out this week. IK Multimedia are shipping the iRing, which we first talked about in show 99, and there's a good chance we're going to have a review for you in the next couple of weeks actually as well. But they are now released and shipping, and you can get as suggested at the time, there are 2 free apps available for iOS devices. The iRing Music Maker and iRing FX Controller are free and available in the available via iTunes right now, or the App Store actually is how you might say it, isn't it?
And just to remind people that this is actually it's a controller system where you put rings on your fingers and they've got these little symbols on. So I suppose they use the symbol as the way of tracking them, and you can then move your hand about in front of the device's camera, and that is converted into the necessary data stream to drive this or that or whatever. But we hope to do a review, an audio podcast review. It's probably one of the rarer things, the audio podcast review, isn't it?
We do them every now and again, but we only do them when we have how can one put it? We only do them when we feel we have something, the product is of genuine interest, and we have so stuff like that. So I think controllers and things like this are something we're really interested in. We're interested in mobile devices and stuff. So I think it's cool. I'm saying we talked a lot about it in show 99, so you can go back and as we said at the audiopodcast.co.uk, you can just drop back and get show 99 and have a listen to it there and hear our thoughts on it. I've actually become more and more intrigued as to how well it works actually, because it struck me that if this works really well, they've released a formal developer SDK now as well with it, and it strikes me that this is if you're going to have anything if you're going to have anything in addition to work with a controller to work with like this kind of interface, then having something which just clips on your hand, is completely passive, and essentially is a piece of plastic with a pattern on it, strikes me as the best possible choice, as opposed to I've done this kind of thing myself with LEDs and stuff like that in the past, and it strikes me that this could be if this works really well, then this could be a really great implementation, which could perhaps see a lot of kind of development beyond that. But it'd be interesting to see if it's if it's going to how well it's going to work. I'm saying maybe it doesn't work.
Cool.
That's going to be an awkward review, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's just going to be moving your hand in front of the screen, or I don't know how we do that, to be honest. But moving on to another controller, this one's a little bit more typical of controllers at large, is the Arturia BeatStep, which looks kind of like one of those little Korg ones. But I imagine maybe there's a twist there, or there's something else going on.
Well, so you're right in thinking you're thinking of something like a nano control, aren't you? Those and essentially it does appear at first glance just to be a set of buttons and a couple of dials on a kind of small, slightly smaller than a USB keyboard sort of format kind of device. And at first glance, yes, perhaps, but upon closer examination, you actually get things like CV outputs, control voltage outputs on it.
Oh. Okay, so this is something you could plug directly into an old-style synthesizer with the correct.
I believe so. Yep, and it also comes with it also supports the USB camera kit for an iPad as well. So you could also plug it into an iPad. And something it does, which is really neat but not apparent in the first glance either, is that it actually also comes with a step sequencer built into it as well. So not only can you use it as not only can you use it as a hit the button and the sound goes in a kind of trigger sort of way, you can also use it as having programmed a sequence. You can press the button and the button causes the sequence playback to happen. which makes sense when you consider the CV option and also the fact you can go to the USB camera kit. So you could have a synth running on your, running on an iPhone or an iPad, and then launch a sequence off your hardware device.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yep.
Excellent. So it is a bit more than one of your little nano controls.
Yeah. Designed for use with Live, BFD, and Easy Drummer. There you go.
There you go. It sounds good. It sounds good. Now,
Arturia are coming out with loads of. Yeah, I'm really interested in Arturia stuff.
Well, no, they are the ones who do their own synthesizers, the hardware analog synthesizers. So I can see where this little box, they obviously it's also designed to plug into their own synthesizers and control stuff that way. So
what I find most interesting is they're emulating. In my mind, they're kind of starting to emulate an old style way of working. If you were to think like late 80s, early 90s, pre-affordable multi-channel live audio, they're starting that kind of MIDI studio kind of.
I was hoping you were going to say pre-Britpop, but
well, I can't describe it like that, can I? So, which is quite interesting because I wonder, from my teaching work, I'm painfully disappointed and aware as to how little of that world's most of the students I deal with actually know anything about. So I'm kind of intrigued that Arturia are kind of like spending a lot of effort, are doing a lot of work in terms of allowing people to go back to that way of working, when I think there's an increasingly large group of people who have no idea about that way of working anyway. So
if it's relevant, it's relevant, and if it isn't, then it isn't. Yeah. There you go. Wise words from the audio podcast. And now we move on to what could be the biggest story of the day. It technically should have been number one, but the way that the notes work means that it's the last news story that we talk about as well. And that is, it's about one of our favorite topics of all time, that there's a rumor that Apple will buy Beats headphones.
For a lot of money.
For a lot of money, and
for billions of dollars.
I suppose in the end, I'm like, so we have to remember, of course, this hasn't been confirmed by either side, but there's been some talk here and there, and who knows where it might go. As I understand it, it's been maybe Beats have been kind of under a bit of a bidding war from numerous sides. So there's Apple, but also I think I read that Google were interested, and maybe another company, but it seems that Apple is the name that everyone's talking about. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't seem crazy. It seems like a lot of money to spend on this kind of thing.
So I guess as the Clear Audio podcast angle is the fact that it's headphones, and we on the audio podcast love headphones.
We do.
We do.
But not necessarily Beats headphones. Now, I'm saying that from the perspective of I haven't tried a set of Beats headphones, so I can't say if I like them or not. But the general consensus, I suppose, is that they're kind of hyped. The quality isn't bad, but they're hyped a certain way for a certain type of music or listening experience. And that might not be the kind of experience that you or I would be interested in.
Well, I guess a couple of things. If I remember this is the moment where Sam would come back with the exact show number, wouldn't he? But a few shows ago, we did talk about an article that was talking about the quality of Beats headphones, and it demonstratively kind of suggested that there were a lot cheaper options that would give you better quality than you were going to get from Beats. And so they were saying, you're not buying Beats for a quality set of headphones in any way. You're spending more money than you need to for lower quality than you could have got. So just, be aware that's what you're doing. And that's fair enough.
And that's exactly Apple's strategy when it comes to headphones. You have to.
Certainly so.
I mean, I can see you've got a couple of Apple Buds there in your ears, and you obviously got them with an iPod or some form of thing. I've never used those headphones, partially because they never stuck in my ears. They would always, there you go, an old school iPod Nano. Those type of earphones just fall out of my ears almost instantaneously, so I've never used them. But having worked for Apple, it was a thing that people used to come in quite often to get replacements because they tend to use them all the time. They have to turn them up because they don't have good sealing, and then they break because they've got too much volume going through them. Sound quality, okay, but Apple have never really been known for making amazing headphones or earphones. So I don't know, but I've been hearing other reasons why this might be going on, why Apple might buy Beats, and it's maybe more to do with music services and people and audiences rather than Apple want to sell headphones.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fair. Well, so my thoughts, and then we'll come back to you for why you think it might happen. So my thoughts about why it won't happen are, first of all, I just don't see what they're buying because as an illustration, Apple. There are no sub brands within Apple. So, you know what I mean? It's like if Apple bought these headphones, then the typical strategy would be for them all to disappear, and then in a few months' time, a new set of headphones to turn up, and they would have Apple logos on them. You know what I mean? That's like they're not going to ever do that. They buy people and immediately remove their branding and just stick onto their own branding. So
Yeah.
with that being the way they do things, they could go out and buy somebody else, like say Sennheiser, and get a much better quality of headphone for a lot less money, and be able to do that kind of process very, very, that would be a much more sensible route for them to go along the lines of, rather than to go down the Beats purchase. Now, I know that Beats have a music service, and iTunes has recently been slipping in terms of Amazon and people on Spotify kind of moving into that territory. But then again, you suspect that Apple could probably do a purchase on Spotify if they wanted to, or Last.fm, if they really
Well,
had a genuine concern.
Apple have got loads of money, haven't they? They've got
Precisely.
loads.
Why buy the minor threat when you could buy the main competitor and just be done? It's like, what I mean? I'm saying that would be perfectly, that would be a better strategy for them than to, because the music service is, while it is operating, I believe the numbers aren't reported, so Beats do not declare their user base number on that accurately, and one suspects the reason for that is because it's not
It's
if
not
the
as
word
big as it actually, as we
yeah,
think it is,
you
as
know,
people think it is.
precisely.
I have to be
If they
honest,
had
I don't
millions of
see.
customers, you would say we have millions of subscribing customers. That's what you would say.
Oh, you mean for the music service, not for the
Yeah, for
headphones?
Beats. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't even know Beats did a music service, so that shows how prominent that is in our minds. Um, I suppose I had multiple thoughts. I mean, the truth is, when I heard about it, I was like, yeah, fine. I don't care. If Apple buy Beats, I don't care because it's not good. The worst thing that happens in these acquisitions is that a brand that you love or that you respect kind of gets destroyed or has some part of it, taken away, and that ruins the experience. I'm not interested in Beats headphones. I will always go with a better quality of headphone, which again, lightly cheaper, Sennheiser, AKG, Audio Technica, any number of these brands I would go with over Beats anyway. So I'm not that fussed. And otherwise, I suppose I just wonder why they would want to spend so much money, and it is the largest amount that Apple would pay to buy another company. It would be their biggest value acquisition ever. So that is notable for me. The reason why they would spend so much money. Is it going to happen? Because you've written in the notes that you don't think it's going to happen.
No, I don't think it's. I think there's a couple of issues. I think the first issue is the reason this story is out and this rumor is running is because Dr. Dre made a YouTube video where he made rumor to the fact that he's going to become a billionaire or something like that, and from that
Oh,
people. And that is the thing that extrapolated the it's going to happen sort of style. And then nobody on either side of the camp has then, no, neither Apple nor Beats have kind of denied it. and
Yeah,
as a consequence, it's kind of hammered around the press from that sort of point of view. You see,
it's
and that
just
makes
giving
me.
the press something to do,
Hmm?
really. It's just giving the press something to do and have a bit of
Yeah,
a back and
exactly so.
forth.
I think maybe there was something, maybe there was something in the background possibly happening, but I suspect it is no longer. No longer the case, to be honest. Maybe there was something initially, but I suspect that this is not the way that Apple traditionally like to do business. So I suspect they will not be.
You say
Oh,
that, but then we do, we're not in the Steve Jobs era anymore. Tim, what's his face, does
Cook.
things differently.
Yeah.
Tim Cook, yes. I apologize, Tim Cook. He does things differently. He's more of a, I think maybe more of a kind of businessman. So he might have a reason to do this. So I'm not going to dismiss it from that perspective. But then, Apple rumors are always a bit weird. Sometimes they're absolutely definitely certain. Sometimes, like the television rumor,
Mm.
nothing. That has completely gone. And like 2 years ago, everyone was talking Apple Television set, this kind of thing,
Yeah.
and just nothing.
But that's what if
So it's hard to say. It's hard to really say.
it.
Same with smartwatches as well. Like,
Yeah.
Google and Samsung have released smartwatches, but Apple are just like nothing's happened there.
It's interesting that you mentioned that as that as an illustration of TV actually, because if I was if you were to say to me, Apple are going to make a huge purchase of some tech company, some electronics company, who are they going to be? Then I would suggest to you that actually part of Sony would be the better choice, because Sony as a company are in a complete mess at the moment. Like the
Hmm.
PS4 is keeping the whole company afloat almost. So if I had a large amount of money and I was allowed to go out and buy any sort of electronics manufacturer, then why not buy Sony and get the camera brand, get the camera brand, get the
Too big
TV
a
brand,
purchase, I'd say, for
get the.
Apple.
Well, maybe, but then the Beats purchase is a huge amount of money for a company that makes fairly shoddy headphones.
Well, yeah, that's true. But the fact is, they look good and people buy them, which is, I suppose, kind of like Sony
Where
as well.
Sony's going wrong, because
But Apple
Sony
don't need
products
to buy
maybe look good, but
Sony.
people don't buy them.
Apple don't need to buy Sony because they just don't. There's nothing in Sony that Apple needs. There's something, if it's true and if it happens, there's something in Beats, and I wonder if it's actually Dre. I wonder if it's Dr. Dre that's kind of, he's got a reputation, and maybe he's the arbiter of some audience that Apple have struggled to get a hold of, and maybe Apple branding Beats headphones with an Apple symbol on them might do something about that. I don't know. It's not about headphones. I still don't think it's about headphones, but we'll have to wait and see. So early June will be WWDC. That's when Apple usually does its big announcements. So a couple of weeks' time, we may know something.
No, that's true. Maybe we're going to see some sort of cross brand, like the HP laptops that have had Beats Audio integrated into them. Maybe we're going to see Apple
Yeah,
head into that sort of territory and do
and
things.
HTC also did have on the one, they had Beats integration, but in the new version of that, the M8, they removed it. So
Well, there was actually, I think it was TechCrunch. I put the link in because it's a nice little sideline. HTC recently sold their share of Beats,
ah,
because HTC are in a mess, are really really are in real trouble at the moment. So financially, so HTC had to sell their share of Beats for under those sort of conditions, and they were just remarking that if Apple really are about to do this deal, then that probably would have saved HTC, because
oh
if
yeah.
Dr. Dre's going to get if he's expecting a couple of billion, then that a
So
couple hundred
maybe Apple
million
have
for
wanted,
HTC would have been good enough.
maybe Apple wanted to buy Beats ages ago, and they were like, no, we're not giving money to HTC as part of a buyout of
Yeah.
Beats. I don't know, who knows? But I feel on a slight sideline, I feel kind of sorry that HTC are having such troubles because their premium phones of late have been really nice pieces of kit, and they just like Samsung stuff is just terrible. That's
I would be inclined to agree with you, with the exception that I have an S3, which is absolutely awesome. But I would agree that the S4, everybody I know has an S4 hasn't been so satisfied, and the S5 apparently the odds of you getting an S5 that works is pretty slim at the moment. So
Yeah. So you went with an
perfect.
S3 in the end. I remember you poring over and spending ages deciding which model you wanted.
It was an S3V and S3V and HTC One V. Wait a few more weeks for an S4. It was indeed, and I think the S3 was the right choice. But to finish our Beat story, up on at the show notes, the audio podcast.co.uk/show/114, we have a link to a Forbes story, which is a good kind of why it may or may not be a good idea. The Verge, who are guessing it's all about wearable. I wasn't convinced, but maybe they're right. And TechCrunch with the HTC Save. So there it is. I'm going to say that I don't think it's going to happen, and when it does happen, Adam, you can come back and remind me of when I got it wrong.
I think I'll go with it. As I said before, I don't really care either way. If Apple buy Beats, I'll be like, whatever. The only thing I really buy from Apple are computers, and I don't do that very often. So,
Yes.
the headphones are neither here or there for me. I don't really care. So, shall we finish? Shall we finish the news section? Oh, no, wait, we can't because I haven't asked the perennial question.
Adam,
Has
has there been a logic update, Adam?
No. We have to go back. Maybe at some point I might go back through the most recent episodes and I'll find out how many weeks I've been asking that question. But no logic update.
We should record a tune which is all about there being no logic updates. I was thinking about this a couple of days ago. Anyway,
the audio podcast presents Where Be Logic
in it.
Okay, let's go on to the plunder.
Plunder. It's plunder time.
And we start with an article from Avid Blogs about the accessibility for blind, visually impaired musicians in Pro Tools.
Yep. There you go. It's a cool read. I suspect, like the vast majority of our listeners, like probably ourselves, we spend very little time considering what it'd be like trying to use a computer without being able to see.
Mm-hmm.
I have actually been involved in a couple of projects many years ago, mainly from a Linux point of view, about looking at these sort of issues. And the solution that people generally go for is your computer talks to you. So it kind of talks to you, and inevitably it becomes really quite infuriating because, well, it just does, to be perfectly honest. Which was part of the reason I got involved for a year or so looking at this more interesting. But obviously, if you're trying to do some audio engineering, you can't really have your computer talk to you. So I thought that was interesting as a
to a degree, but there'll be certain things because being able to navigate around. So the article kind of goes into it's kind of a history of particularly the Mac version of Pro Tools, and how in Mac OS 9 actually there were solutions that allowed Pro Tools to be used fairly successfully in that kind of way. The operating system or the program would tell you that something has happened. Shifting to Mac OS 10, the voiceover functionality only came in 10.4, so it was a few years in. So those musicians held onto their Mac OS 9 systems until voiceover turned up, and the guy writing the article actually went out when 10.4 was out. He went out and got himself the new version of I think maybe a new computer with a new version of OS 10, and found that Pro Tools didn't work. Because there was some incompatibility with the way Pro Tools worked. Pro Tools was upgraded, improved it a lot, but then in 11 it went back a step. But then in 11.1 they've jumped forward again, so they're kind of back on track. I thought it was an interesting article because actually it's hosted by Avid, but actually it kind of, when you read it, you're like, actually Avid didn't handle this very well, did they? Okay, they've got back to a reasonable situation now, but to have in the jump from Pro Tools 10 to Pro Tools 11 a reduction of accessibility features in comparison to the last version, that's actually pretty bad. I just found that to be more the thing that's kind of what that post told me about, but they have been addressed. So,
I thought it was an interesting, it'd be an interesting read for for our listeners, you know what I mean, as something a little bit unusual. And I did detect that last week there was some criticism of the plunder items.
Oh, I can't remember what they were. Was the criticism that, oh, were they like sci-fi related and you weren't here, so you put them in and they're all like to do with Star Trek, and me and Sam are like, okay, so was
Yes.
one of them the data singing a song or listening to multiple tracks at once?
That's right, yes.
Yeah, I was just like not quite sure the context here, but you know, we've got to go through them
anyway. I might try and see what the most outrageous plunder item I can get you guys to cover while I'm not on the show is one day, just for fun. There you go.
Okay.
And then Sam has put this item up here just to make us aware of a open source hardware controller, which is the Sugarcube, which is built on a 4x4 grid of kind of monome style LED buttons with motion sensors and some dials, and battery powered.
That's what I took away from. I watched the video. I went to the website. The website's very nice. I watched the first video. The first thing I took away was that's a monome, but it's only a 4x4 monome, not an 8x8 monome. But it does. I don't know if the monome has the accelerometers in it, because this one you can
I don't believe it does. No.
You can tilt it forward, backward, left, and right. You can do the shake, and that data can go through to max. So maybe that's where it's different. But is this something you can actually build yourself?
Yeah, well, it's the open hardware, isn't it? So it's an Arduino.
Ah, our favorite little box.
It's an Arduino at the base of it, so you can, program an Arduino, which probably means that in terms of functionality, this is a suggested design, and I'm sure the build instructions will be available in terms of how to build it. But you could, if you wanted to. Yeah, but Instructables have the full build documentation, but obviously you could amend this or modify the design as much as you wanted to. So if your concern is it doesn't have enough buttons on it, then I'm sure you can just add more buttons.
So, and I guess the software, maybe if you build it to the correct thing, then the software will have what you need. Like you can download the software from somewhere and just load it straight into the Arduino and it will work and you don't have to do much.
Yeah, the Arduino and MSB code is all up on GitHub. So
and do you happen to know why? Because it's got two A style USB connectors on it. I wonder why it's got two.
I don't know. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Maybe one is connectivity and the other is for charging, because that's actually charging and connectivity is a little bit awkward sometimes to do in this kind of device. But I don't know for certain. I'm just
I guess there'll be some things that are like a bit tougher to do if you don't have access to like complicated stuff. But anyway, yeah.
It has a power supply as well, doesn't it? It has a.
Well, yeah, it's got the PSU port on it, so that would make it less. Has it got a battery in it?
Yeah.
Is there even charge? I suppose you can always power it from USB.
Yep, it does have a battery. It has a battery inside it. So.
And does it say how much it costs if you were to buy all the parts?
No, maybe the Instructables site would let us know that. But
I'm there right now. It doesn't have a figure for the last bit. But anyway, yeah. So you're interested in making your own little mini Arduino type thing, and yes, it does come with a battery. I can see that right here. Then head to our notes. You can get through to the link for the Sugarcube MIDI controller from there. Fantastic.
It's very good.
And that's it.
That's it. We've made it to the end of show 114.
Yay! We say yay, but actually, it's like, oh. Yay, this horror is over. Woohoo!
But do not fear, because we anticipate the return of the audio podcast next week. So there we go.
I don't know if anyone can actually hear Scott there. He completely disappeared from me. Scott, say something.
Hello there.
Oh, he's okay.
But it's not hello time, it's goodbye time.
It's goodbye time.
We should return next week for the next audio podcast show, but we are a little bit flaky, so maybe it won't work out, but hopefully it will. But for now,
let's commit, Scott. We'll see you next week, or maybe Tuesday, Wednesday. We'll see, because the audio podcast is great. And have a great week. I've been Adam Jansch.
I've been Scott Hewitt, and this has been the audio podcast.
Yeah.
Yes. But I gotta get to the stop broadcast button, and it's moving. Got it.
Why